actually.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to talk about a mystery that was suggested in May of last year by Katrina or Katerina. I'm not sure how.
I think it's Katrina.
I think it's Katrina too, via email, so thanks.
Thanks.
We've had a couple other suggestions of this since then, but that was the big one. That was the first one.
Yeah.
Big one, first one, whatever. Anyways, today we're going to talk about Joseph Newton Chandler III. Ready?
Not his real name.
Shh.
Oh, sorry.
Let's do the overview first.
Okay.
On about July 24th, 2002, maybe July 23rd, 2002, not quite sure which, Joseph Newton Chandler III shot himself in the head with a .38 caliber Charter Arms handgun. It's like a little revolver, this gun.
Little 5-shooter.
5-shooter, yeah. About a week later, police arrived to investigate the death because the other tenants in the apartment complex said it smelled. And the landlords just called the cops.
This was middle of July. I bet
It was the hottest days of the year that year.
One of those jobs you just don't want.
Yeah, pretty much.
Actually, I knew somebody who had a daughter who was obnoxious and antisocial. She got a job doing one of those cleanup crews, you know, and it paid well.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Didn't
It
require
takes a strong stomach. That's really all it requires.
Yeah, it didn't require a huge skill set, but they paid you a lot.
Yeah. So the police arrive, and they deem it to be a totally normal suicide. They ran his dental records to confirm that it was, in fact, Joseph Newton Chandler III. Dental records matched. This was in Cleveland, Ohio.
So case closed, right?
Case
We're done?
closed. Pretty much,
suicide.
yeah. Done. Yeah. Well, okay, so maybe not. They did cremate the body shortly after that. They did an autopsy and then cremated the body.
Which is kind of too bad.
Which is, well, it's normal. Normal procedure in this.
Yeah, there was nothing initially to indicate to do anything other.
So the person who was named as his will executor hired a probate lawyer, and they start to go through Chandler's estate and find out that actually this was the second time that Joseph Chandler III had died. The first was in a car accident in 1945 when he was 8 years old. Yeah. So the mystery is, who was Joseph Newton Chandler III Mark II?
Mark II?
Yeah.
The more recent one.
2.0.
Yeah, so time for theories, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
The old one was not doing anything with that name, so what the hell?
Yeah, why not?
We'll pick it up and use it.
May as well just use it. Just kidding. Not theories yet. The probate lawyers are trying to place this $82,000 legacy, which isn't nothing. I did the conversion even. I mean, you know, it was only 15-ish years ago, but I did the conversion. It's more than $100,000 in today's money, and that's not nothing. When they started calling Chandlers, all of the Chandlers that they could find in the East, kind of where Chandler's mom was from, they quickly found out that Joey, the original Joseph Newton Chandler III, had died in a car accident on December 21st, 1945, with his parents in Texas on US Highway 82.
That's a terrible Christmas.
Yeah. They were on their way to spend Christmas with the extended family, with his father's extended family. And there's no details really about... I've read the news articles from the local papers at the time, and there's not really any... It doesn't say what happened.
Yeah, though it was a tragedy, it wasn't extensively covered or anything
so
like
all
that.
three of them died, and they were all buried in Texas. That would make Joey's identity... We're going to call original Joey... The original Joseph Newton Chandler
Version
III.
1.0?
Yeah, we're going to call him Joey, because that's... A lot of people refer to him as that. And then Joseph Newton Chandler III, we'll probably call Chandler. I might accidentally call him Joe every once in a while, because, you know, there's another
Don't get
Joe in the
confused,
room.
Joe.
Yeah.
I'm not dead.
Yeah.
I'm not quite dead.
Not quite yet. Yeah. Anyway, it would make Joey a pretty good target for identity theft. You know, his parents are dead. He doesn't seem to have any close family relatives, anything like that. So if somebody were suddenly to start being this person, who knows?
Yeah.
You know? There's no parents to look up or anything like that.
Oh, yeah. No, there's nobody to catch it easily.
Yep. So at this point in the case, our new case, not our old case, our 2002 case, the U.S. Marshals take over, as they do for a lot of cases like this. So let's go back a little bit to talk about Joey's life, and then talk about how Joseph Chandler III became...
Bing?
Yeah.
Not Chandler Bing?
Not Chandler Bing.
Okay.
How Chandler became Joey, basically. Does that work?
That works.
Okay. Joey was born on March 11th, 1937, to parents Ellen Chandler and Joseph Newton Chandler Jr. In the United States of America, a Social Security number is assigned to you at birth. We know this, but it occurs to me that people who don't live here might not know that.
does.
This one, yeah.
Very good point.
But this didn't really start in earnest until 1936 was when I think the first Social Security number was assigned. And then the cards weren't issued until you were an adult. And that continued until the 70s or something like that. So Joey would have never had a Social Security card, and it's likely that his birth certificate was somewhere at his parents' house and just kind of got tossed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his parents' belongings probably would have been... Somebody would have taken that, and then, of course, it just moves and disappears.
I mean, it
over time.
probably
landfill.
it may have just been burned, or I mean, it could have just been gotten rid of because he died.
Yeah.
He has a certificate of birth, so why does you shouldn't need that birth certificate anymore, and there's nobody
Not
of
really.
interest to keep it. These days, obviously, you need your Social Security number to prove that you're a citizen, and you need your card. A lot of employers will require that you bring your actual card so they can see it. But again, in those days, that was not the case. And you can get a replacement Social Security card, and you can get a replacement birth certificate these days, but you have to go through a lot of stuff to get it.
Yeah.
These days. I'm gonna keep
Oh, yeah,
saying
no, it's not an
these
easy
days.
process.
No, it's not.
Several decades ago, it was actually pretty easy.
Yeah, it turns out.
Have we ever talked about, Joe might remember this back in the day when you used to be able to, you'd buy a wallet and it would have a fake Social Security card in it. Does this ring a bell to you at all?
No.
Yeah.
So it was a thing to just be like, and you can put your Social Security card in here, no big deal. And it was obviously not a real Social Security card, but it had a Social Security number on it.
Oh.
And what it was the secretary at the office of the company that manufactured the wallets. Social Security numbers weren't that important of a thing, so they used her Social Security number, thinking, who would actually be dumb enough to try to use this thing? And for decades, people were using that as their actual Social Security number. If I remember right, she had to eventually get a new one because it was just so out of control.
That's insane.
Wow, that's kind of a dumb thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just one of those weird things. No, nobody really cares about these. They're not that important, and then just backfired.
Yeah, well, it's relatively easy to get a new Social Security card, not a number, but a card these days. I know because I looked into it because I thought I lost mine. Turns out my parents had it. Don't worry. But really, you can, as long as you're not getting, I think it was you can get 10 a year or something like that. Some absurd number a year.
10 cards a year?
I don't know. Maybe, I'm just doing this from memory. But as a U.S. citizen who has a passport, all I would have to do is take my passport and they would say, oh, yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
Great, no problem. That obviously is
Wasn't the
now.
case then, yeah.
It's not the case then. So in order to become someone else, you have to have their Social Security card and their birth certificate. Pretty much. And Chandler had both of these things. Now, we talk about this a lot, so I'm just going to go ahead and bite the bullet and talk a little bit about who can get vital records, is what they call it. It's birth certificates, original or certified copies of birth certificates or death certificates.
And you're going to reference Oregon specifically in this? 'Cause
Yeah.
It varies from state to
It
state.
does. I can't imagine it varies.
dramatically.
I really can't imagine it varies that much, actually.
I
to
would
be
actually
honest
say
with
it
you.
probably varies from state to state.
I can't. I mean, this seems totally logical to me, and I don't know why anybody would do it any other way, but hey.
And I'm sure that in another state, because I've seen things like this where it's like, oh, it's going to be oh, no, it's not the same. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
There
that's
you
fair.
go.
That's fair, yeah. So within the first 100 years following the date of birth, those records are totally restricted, which makes sense, right? Yeah, because probably somebody isn't going to live past 100, although these days...
A little more of that.
Yeah. So if you are the person named on the record and you're 15 years or older, you can order a certified copy of a vital record.
And what explain vital record again?
It's a birth certificate or a death certificate. And
Just
I think there's
one of those two.
I think there's two other ones,
Okay.
but it has to do with your status as a existing being.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not like marriage certificates are a different thing.
Got it.
Your husband or wife or domestic partner who is registered by the state can order a vital record on you. A child, a parent, a step-parent can order something on you. A step-parent until you're 18 can order a vital record. And your brother or sister, grandparent, grandchild, legal guardian, legal representative, authorized representative or government agency conducting official duties. That's
Jesus
it.
Christ, everybody can get one.
I know. It's surprisingly a lot,
It is a lot.
but it's a good list, I think. I mean, there's definitely...
It covers most eventualities.
Yeah, it does open some stuff up, but, hey. When ordering a birth certificate, obviously you have to say what your relationship is. You have to be able to prove that it's you. But these are all things that you have to do now. Back then, I think it was as easy as writing a letter. If you had someone's social security number, for instance, you just write a letter and say, this is my social security number, this is me, I need a certified copy of my thing.
And it was taken at face value
It's taken
to be
at face
true.
value. Yeah, exactly. And I know that was true in the 70s,
It was.
and this is now becoming relevant. We're off our little side path. Here we go. Chandler requested Joey's birth certificate in 1978, as well as a social security card. It would be the first social security card that Joseph Newton Chandler III was issued. Since he died when he was 8, he didn't have one yet. Anyway, he wrote from Rapid City, South Dakota, which is where both documents were mailed to kind of a shack behind a house. But it seems most likely to everybody who's investigated the case that he didn't actually ever live there, that he just checked the mailbox frequently. That it was kind of, nobody was really
was a
living
drop,
there.
essentially.
Basically. Yeah.
That's a clever guy.
Yeah, really smart. He moved to East Lake, Ohio, right after that, and a website that doesn't exist anymore outside of the Wayback Machine, so you can see it on the Wayback Machine. Hopefully we'll post a link to it, because it's a pretty good website. It's called crimeshadows.com. They reported that they did a check on when Chandler ordered the documents, and they said that it had happened, that actually the Social Security card had been issued in 1973. I think you can probably chalk it up to like crappy handwriting or a smudged typewriter. I mean, 3 and 8 are really close together.
If you look at, we do this all the time. We look at old photocopied, typewritten documents that have been photocopied a half dozen times.
Yep.
They degrade, and a 3 starts to look like an 8.
Or an
And
8
vice
starts to look
versa.
like a 3.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I mean, it would be great to know 100% for sure, but barring going to see those documents in person, the original documents, I don't think we'll know. So I'm happy to stick with 78. Are you guys happy to stick with 78?
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
So we'll say that Chandler became Joey in 1978, and I'm just now realizing how much like a Friends episode this sounds like.
Oh my God, you're right.
I was not making it.
Investigators found that Chandler had probably lived in California for a time, maybe working with the U.S. Navy, and then he moved to Cleveland in 1979, and then he moved into his last apartment in 1986 in East Lake, Ohio.
I've never seen this clarified. How do they determine where he lived? Like, I've
So-
never seen it specified.
I can tell you actually the answer to that question. It's on his job applications and his rental applications. So it's just supplied from him.
Okay.
So not necessarily true.
It's not
so
necessarily
we
true.
don't know that there's any truth to it based on a man who was living under an assumed identity for 20-some years.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes me feel much better, because I wondered if it was something like that, but I never caught it.
Yeah, I think that his Cleveland in 79 is documented because I think that's where he was working his first job as an electrical engineer. And then when he moved to East Lake, that was also documented.
Yeah.
But his time in California is not 100% documented. In fact, the company that he listed working for that was contractors for the U.S. Navy had no record of him ever working there. But again, he could have been working under a different name. It's possible. I don't really know.
Could be a completely false lead.
Also, frankly, I'm surprised that he got a job with putting a job that the job previous to his, and they didn't even bother calling them, but okay.
It's 70s.
But it's an electrical engineer. You would kind of want to know that person knows what they're doing, wouldn't you?
But it's the 70s, and it's an era where, again, you take things that people say at face value, and if a guy says, I know how to do this, and you ask him some questions, and he competently answers them, you believe him.
That's fair, yeah.
And also, they don't necessarily call all your references. They might call 1 or 2, maybe.
You would think they would
But-
call your most recent.
Yeah, probably, but, you can't overlook just laziness.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the whoever was doing, I didn't find anything fishy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I didn't find anything because I didn't look for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Chandler was an electrical engineer and designer, as we've been kind of talking about. He did not have friends. I know that that's a thing that people say, I don't really have friends. No, he did not have friends. In fact, the guy who was the executor of his will was a coworker at his first job. When he had 2 jobs that are documented that he actually worked in. And this first one was with Edco Co. And he worked with this guy, Mark.
Yeah, I think it was Mark.
It was Mark.
Yeah, and then
He stated strongly that they were not friends.
he actually when Joseph Chandler asked him to be the executor of his estate, he agreed to it, thinking, "Oh, he's not gonna die."
Well,
And he really regrets that now.
He absolutely regrets it. And in fact, the only reason that he became the executor on the will is because he was on the lease. He was a co-signer on the lease of Chandler's most recent apartment. And that was because he went and was helping Chandler with some documents and found out that it was actually the landlord was going to be the co-signer because he really didn't have anyone. And Mark felt bad and said, okay, I'll be a co-signer with you on your lease. You're probably a trustworthy guy. And then since he was the only name that they could definitively connect to him, they said, all right, it's your job to execute the will. He was never actually named as the executor of the will by Chandler. Like, Chandler never asked him to be the executor.
I would never do that.
Yeah.
Co-sign for a coworker that I felt bad for? No.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, again, things are much different now, but in terms of what happens when you're a co-signer and somebody filches out, but no way.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. So, I mean, he really genuinely didn't have friends. Mark, the executor, was the closest thing to a friend. And I know that you will find his last name out there, but in more recent interviews with him, he has asked that his last name be left off of it. So we're going to continue to just honor that, even though it's really easy to go find out what his last name is. We're not going to be just spreading it around.
Chandler was just kind of from all the coworker accounts, he was kind of an oddball.
Yeah, he was really weird. There was one incident that the coworkers always recount, and this is genuinely the only anecdote that exists about Chandler, right? And it is that he drove to LL Bean in Maine, which is like a 12-hour drive from the Ohio location, East Lake.
There wasn't an LL Bean store closer?
I don't know. I think there is, but I don't know in the 70s what, I don't know
Must
what.
have been in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, in the 80s. Or maybe the 90s. But, I mean, even then, I don't know really where things were. But he drove 12 hours to El Bean, and he did one circle around the parking lot, and there were no spots, so he just turned around and drove home. And he was quoted as saying, if they don't have a parking spot for me, they don't have my business.
Well, that's fair.
Is it?
It seems a little psycho, really. But
Yeah.
I mean, it seems a little crazy.
So he drove for 24 hours for naught.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
He reportedly created a static noise machine or a white noise machine that he had with him at all times, and he listened to it in his headphones pretty much all the time. I think he, even when he was out on jobs and things like that, which I recognize as a crazy thing, but also if you don't really like people or you don't want to interact with people, that's a really good way to tune people out.
Noise canceling.
Yeah.
That's what that's a great way to, if you cannot think while other people are just nattering along next to you,
Yeah. Oh,
you gotta block them out.
Or if you can't stand other people, I mean, it's even as simple as just being annoyed by people.
Or some sounds can really bug you too. I know that there's certain sounds that really irritate the hell out of me. So maybe there was a lot of those sounds going on in his office.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple things that are more recently diagnosed disorders that are recognized as actual mental disorders that will make people legitimately angry. That are noises that are totally normal noises, but
Oh, I know. Like I've had coworkers, and people eat the yogurt out of the little plastic thing, and you get to the bottom, and it's always stritch. That noise drives me crazy.
yeah. Chandler told his coworkers that he had been married twice, once to a Cuban woman who did not speak English.
That's strange.
He spoke of his sister,
Did
Mary.
he speak Spanish, by the way?
I don't think so.
I've never seen anything that indicated that he did.
Yeah, I don't. So don't ask me how they communicated.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting marriage.
they
Well,
were
they're
both-
married. You don't communicate when you're married.
I've
point.
heard that. Yes. He said that he had a sister, Mary R. Wilson, who lived in Columbus, Ohio, and he listed her on some of his forms, but the address was vacant, and Mary Wilson was probably totally made up.
There's a
So,
good chance there.
really, really good chance. Yeah.
He said he had a brother too, didn't he?
He sometimes said he had a brother.
Yeah.
His stories about himself were not usually the same.
As if they were made up on the fly.
Although the sister that he used, the address was the same for all of the applications, and I think even he referenced her when he wrote for the cards or something.
Social
There was
Security
something
card?
earlier that he referenced her in as well. But again, who knows? The investigators on this case have some kind of descriptive things to say about Chandler as well. They say that he lived a hermit's life. His apartment was sparse but had a few books. And the official profile is that he suffered obsessive compulsive disorder, and he didn't drink or smoke and was antisocial and seldom appeared to be at ease in public.
So a total introvert.
Yeah. One of the other interesting traits is he was an engineer, of course, and so engineers have a certain kind of personality kind of thing.
They do.
He never wrote in cursive script. He always wrote in
Block letters.
block letters, all caps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, from what everybody can tell, he was really, really intelligent. And they think they knew that he knew what he was doing, that he was really living the perfect life to keep off the radar. I mean, he wasn't...
knew what he was doing with his false identity and how to
exactly.
go. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't spend a lot of money. He didn't buy anything that would raise red flags. He didn't partake in any kind of habitual behavior, right? He didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't go out. So, he did. He led a quiet life. He call it a modest bank account, which is probably true. And he really didn't move around a lot. He was really good at attracting attention.
Not attracting attention?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not sorry. Yeah.
I could see why you wouldn't move that often if you got to get somebody to co-sign the lease every time you do it.
Yeah.
I would imagine, though, no, I don't think that's right. Because after your first apartment that you've been in for 5 years and they call the landlord and he says, always paid on time, no big deal, then you don't need a co-signer. It's when you're
When you got no
fresh.
history.
Yeah, you got no history.
Right.
And I don't
Or when
believe-
you're moving around a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't believe he had a credit history, did he?
Nope. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cash only.
Yeah. In fact, he was so good at this whole living off the radar thing that investigators initially thought maybe he was in the long-term witness protection program of some kind. But that was ruled out quickly by the U.S. Marshals who were investigating the case because same program, mostly.
They would know.
They would know. Mark, the not friend,
Co-worker.
the coworker, the only coworker, said that he had actually invited Chandler to come to a Halloween party in 1992, totally expecting him to not show up. And this was just kind of after the whole... Well, it was like 3 or 4 years after he had signed the lease with Chandler. And
Chandler got his apartment in 86, so
Yeah,
that's...
Yeah, 86. You're right. No,
86.
you're right.
So this is
I don't know
6
why I
years
had
later.
89 in my head somehow. Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was a while later, but he definitely says that he tried to at least speak with Chandler once a year. He really felt for the guy, I think. But it turns Chandler showed up to the party. They
Not
did not
unexpectedly.
expect him at all. They were 100% sure that he was not going to show up, and he did. He showed up, and he was dressed in a full-out gangster. He had the pinstripe suit and the wide lapel and the cigar and the hat, and that's a little odd. I mean, I've seen reported that he only had one change of clothes in his entire house, so that's a pretty big length to go to
Sure is.
for a Halloween party. But there you go.
He looks pretty sharp in that suit.
He does, and those are the pictures that you'll see a lot on the internet. Those two pictures of him looking slightly nefarious.
They're the only candid photos of him.
They are, and he does. It's definitely worth looking at those because he does look pretty different than he does in the one picture, the ID picture.
Mm-hmm.
His dental record is on file, as mentioned, but as also mentioned, it was made during the 23 or so years that he was Chandler. obviously, like an 8-year-old Joey's dental records probably wouldn't be super helpful in a case like this. But the dental records are attributed to him, so...
So they checked those before they burned the body?
They checked those to identify him, to make sure he was the guy who was on the lease, right?
They found a local dentist who had worked on his teeth then, correct?
I presume that's how they did it.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
would think.
Yeah, to get his dental
I would
records.
Yeah, it's not
presume
like the
that's
government's
it.
got that on file.
Yeah.
I hope not.
Not usually.
Because,
Yeah.
boy, they're going to be disappointed in my teeth.
Yeah, me too.
I'm kind of curious about if his dentist noticed anything unusual about his dental work, but I guess...
I haven't seen any reports, and I think they would have mentioned it.
Probably.
They also have DNA on file from some old medical visits, I guess. He had advanced colon cancer, and he had gone through some treatment, but he insisted on paying for everything in cash, which, again, sounds like something this guy would do. And so he just couldn't afford it. Apparently, his first round of treatments cost him $80,000, and he paid in cash. And then they wanted him to do chemo, so that's where they had the DNA samples from, all the testing and stuff like
Probably
that.
taking biopsies.
So they cremated the body, so nobody really examined his fingers, but also they thought, well, surely they had an entire apartment full of stuff. Surely there's at least one good print, but no, all smudges. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
All right.
But I will just mention that he was an electrical engineer, so, burning your fingertips with...
Have you ever used a soldering iron?
Yeah.
It's easy to do.
Super easy. So
you're
it
not
wouldn't
careful.
really surprise me a whole lot. But again, we can talk about some other reasons that might be.
You can also sand your fingertips and, or...
We'll talk
take
about some
acid.
other reasons of why that might be in a minute. And then his autopsy revealed, on top of the terminal colon cancer, that he also had male pattern baldness, which leads most people to believe that he's wearing a hairpiece in his ID picture,
Might be.
which I'm willing to believe.
Yeah.
There are so few pictures of him, in the two candid ones, he's wearing a hat, so you can't tell what's under there. So I don't know what he looked like in life.
Yeah.
I don't know if he had
there's no
hair
good
or-
reference.
Or even if he wore a hairpiece. I don't know about any of that. So one final note before we move on to our next little thing that we need to talk about is that Chandler would sometimes apparently just go dark, like just disappear for a couple days, sometimes a month at a time, but mostly just a couple of days. And Mark said that when he asked him about it, Chandler would just say, they were close, they're getting close. And that was the only description he would give him.
They were getting close.
Yeah.
That's weird.
It's super weird, right?
Aliens.
Aliens, I'm telling you.
Totally aliens.
Yeah. So here's the next thing we need to talk about, and that is that someone familiar to many of you takes a big interest in this case, or at least did a year ago. I don't know if he's moved on or not, because he tends to do that, but that person is James Renner. And I'll be totally 100% upfront and transparent in saying that I did not reach out to him for this story because of the weird non-responsive stuff that we received when we were researching the Mara Murray case. And I didn't really want to go through that again. So we did not talk to Mr. Renner about this case, but we did look at a lot of research through his blogs that he's written, some Reddit posts, and also an article that he said doesn't exist on the internet anymore, but we found on the Wayback Machine. So we've read, I feel we've done our due diligence on this one. Renner claims that Chandler was a sexual deviant, and I don't really know why. I think it's a bit sensationalist that he claims this, but we'll run through this anyway. He posted a thread on Reddit a year ago that made this claim. And again, there's nothing that he really says to back it up. His strongest bit of evidence is that on February 4th, 1989, a guy calling himself Joseph Newton Chandler, I don't think there was a third, but that could be omitted from the story, I don't know, shows up at a local hospital.
Is that in air quotes, the local hospital bit?
It's
That's
the
what I
wavy
thought I saw.
fingers. I don't know if it's air quotes. It's kind of like, whoa, local hospital, with lacerations on his penis. He said that he hurt himself trying to masturbate with a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Which I feel like isn't that weird of a thing, and he was just
yeah.
I mean, okay, yes, it's not like
Normal.
it's not the most normal thing, but if you're a lonely guy, like,
Yeah, what the heck, But
I mean, Joe knows something about that.
up yours.
Yeah.
But there's stores that sell things.
I did manage to confirm this. I talked to Pete Elliott from the U.S. Marshal Service,
Yeah.
who's investigating this, and he said that the ER story actually is true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they-
and I'm
but-
not okay. And so I'm not saying that story didn't happen. That's not what I'm
Yeah,
saying. I am saying that
But does that
lonely
make him
older guy
does that make him a
showing up
pervert? No.
with saying I hurt myself, masturbating with a vacuum is not weird. And the other thing that I want to say about this is that the doctor did note that he thought that Chandler was probably older than he reported being, but he didn't say anything about not believing his story about the vacuum. I think the implication that Renner's trying to make is that this guy was like cutting himself or like doing some kind of like huge self-harm, but I really think that the guy just got his penis stuck in a vacuum.
No, any young men listening right now, don't try that.
Don't try it. Please don't try it.
Don't
It's not
use
a
your
good
mom's
idea.
Hoover. Don't do it.
Well, let me give you another piece of advice, and that is when you go to the ER with something embarrassing like this, don't give them your real name and pay in cash.
Yeah.
And I used to. I had a girlfriend years ago. Yeah, she worked at the building records office. So this woman shows up with, let's just say, a very embarrassing sexually related injury at the ER. She gives them her name and her medical insurance and everything. And in this office that my girlfriend worked in at the time, there were more than 100 people there, and of course, every person in that office saw a copy of that ER report.
Absolutely.
And also, a claim went out to an insurance company, and I'm sure hundreds of people at that insurance company saw that claim.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, fake name, paying cash.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I don't think that the doctors didn't, I think they believed him. I think that was totally normal. I think it's totally sensationalist of Renner to say that this makes this guy a sexual deviant, but okay.
Accidents happen, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it happened, and I don't think anybody's saying it didn't happen. Anyway. Renner goes on to say that police found, quote, weird gadgets he created for purposes unknown and a strange child's peanut sticker from 1965 and a hobby tool nobody has yet identified.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm laughing because the hobby tool was so obvious.
Literally within like 30 seconds
Of the post going up.
somebody identified it.
It's a label maker.
It's a raised label maker from like the 70s.
Yeah, it's got the black or colored tape that you punch and the letters stand out white against it. Yeah.
And a lot of electrical engineers use it to label gear or parts or whatever.
Yeah, so it's the one that's got the sort of pistol handle on it.
Yeah.
And then
the round thing on the top.
And
you
it's
rotate.
adhesive on the back of the label strip, and you stick it on, and it's got your name on it.
I had one of those.
I had
labeled
one of those, too.
everything.
Yes.
Yeah. And, again, it's like, oh, weird. He has a sticker from 1965. Like, what?
People have
Sentimental
things.
Stuff. And even if it wasn't stuff, it's, it's like a good job sticker. Maybe he got it as an award. Maybe he found it on the street and thought it was cute. It's not that weird. And yes, as far as I know, those black boxes have yet to be identified.
Well, one of them does make the white noise.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, that's what
They're too big, I thought.
That's what Pete Elliott.
Oh, he said one of the ones.
He said one of them was a white
noise generator.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like portable white noise generator and just house white noise generator. They look like the first gen of like shapeshifter tech from Fringe to
Well,
me.
it's totally. I mean, I looked at these things, and you two know this. I work with a bunch of engineers, and it looks like the early prototype versions that the guys that I work with would make, where they drill a couple of air holes in it so it can breathe and radiate heat and yada yada yada. And he scribbled on the back of it commands, but it looks like I swear I saw this somewhere. It made me think that it's a power inverter.
That was my thought too. That's where you saw it. It's my script.
Maybe.
Yeah, that it looked like an early version of that, and it's a thing that the patent wasn't filed for until 1992. So I mean, it could have been tinkering, but it does. It looks like that black pack that comes on your laptop. That's
On
what we're talking
the
about, right?
power cord. I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Well, no, what I was talking about is like a converter, because it's a power inverter and power converter.
Yeah, the inverter takes it from DC to AC.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things is that I was looking it up is the inverters are used for motors.
Yeah.
Because you can adjust the voltage on them. And the first thing that made me think of was, you ever played with an old model train set? Like really old control boxes that have the dial?
Oh, yeah.
And it totally made me think of some homemade version of one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's On the bottom, it says on two sides, or no to Renner. In pencil, and people have said, well, why didn't he use a label maker? And it's like, well, maybe he was out of tape, or maybe he didn't want it to be permanent, maybe he wasn't ready for it to be permanent. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things they could be, and it sounds like Pete knows, or Mr. Elliott, sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Elliott knows,
Marshall Elliott.
knows, that at least one of them's the white noisemaker, so that's identified, and I just think they're not really that nefarious.
No, not really.
They're weird, but
They're
if the
weird.
guy just sat
But
at
he
home,
was a tinkerer.
Yeah, I was gonna say if he sat at home and he just worked on stuff all the time.
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, let me try this. Maybe I can, make the better mousetrap.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly, yeah.
That's why he might have just actually gotten a lot of joy out of just soldering stuff,
Yeah, he could have. The other thing that Renner says is that the gun was purchased, the gun that Chandler used to kill himself.
The 38.
The 38 was purchased in